On the Wake Up Radio presents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. More important than that, you can catch us at OTW2.com. That's OTW2.com, which is a Black-owned free speech platform. Here. How is everyone today? So, see who we got in the building, at least on the YouTube side. BB4 straight black pride to spirit, mind, character, soul. BB4 then you got ripped off. BB4 sister Vanessa. BB4 straight black pride to brother Elijah. BB4 to brother Crow. BB4 straight black Saw. And BB4 to brother Kevin. If you are currently not on the YouTube side, if you're on the Instagram side, if you would like to join us on the YouTube side, I'd appreciate it. You get better visuals. You'll be able to see better. But I did want to put it on the Instagram side as well for the beginning, because this is a discussion that is very, very important. Here's the reality situation, to make it kind of short and sweet. We are very close to World War III, and it's going to be very hard to avert it. It's been set up very well with multiple contingencies, and actually we're on the second contingency. Now, the intelligent question you should ask is, why would anyone want to start World War III? Right? That's like that. That's a logical, intelligent question. Well, to get a full understanding of that, you would have to get the book series from Brother Irritated Genie, where he talks about who is the problem and then the psychology of the who. So what I am going to do, before I get started proper on tonight's program, I'm going to apologize now. And I'm going to apologize because I neglected to record yesterday's event at the Chopping It Up session in Baltimore, Terra Cafe. And the reason I'm going to apologize is because I saw our brother Irritated Genie elevate to a level that he has not been at. So he's beyond where he was before. And so that's why I'm apologizing, because realistically, people haven't seen him where he is. And let me explain. For those who know Brother Genie, a lot of times we do a PowerPoint presentation live. He'll he'll bring up video and things like that, and use that as a way to teach the people, right? But he didn't do that. He just spoke to the people. He's like, so when I asked him beforehand, I was like, you want me to record this? And he's like, it's up to you. I said, well, what you gonna do? He said, I'm just gonna go through the book a little bit. I'm talking to the people, and then I'm gonna do a book signing and be done with it, right? So yesterday, here in the entire area, the region, we had thunderstorms come through. The lights were flickering, and the wind and all that, all types of good stuff. After the brother started, right? And he started teaching. And he broke down concepts that are complex and confounding to most people, including people who have knowledge, right? And he had a breakthrough in a way that they were able to easily comprehend what he was saying, right? And that was really the first time that happened in that manner, where people were able to grasp concepts that they had heretofore been unable to grasp. And he did it without the need of anything other than his mind, his mouth, and the book that he had written in his hand. And at that moment, what I saw was the evolution of a man to another level, able to take complex ideas and simplify them so that they're easily understood even by people who have no knowledge of the subject, right? And this is a rare skill. So I say that to say he has reached another tier in his ability to teach, and I witnessed it. So therefore, whenever I have the opportunity to document him speaking, I would do that and keep it and share it amongst the people to the best of my ability. So that's that. So that was this weekend. That was yesterday. For some reason, I'm thinking it's Monday, but that was yesterday. Tonight, we're going to talk about how we're how we're steadily moving closer to World War III. We're going to talk about what's happening, why, and we're going to bring documentation because, of course, documentation defeats conversation. So, like I said, for those who are on Instagram, you can come over to YouTube just look up DC Radical 1, and you should be able to find me. And I'll be live streaming here for the next 2 hours. But if you want to stay over on the Instagram side, that's cool too. I see a lot of people have come through, but it's hard for me to see how many people are still in the building. So let's get started with the discussion. But actually, no, let's not get started with the discussion. Before I get started with the discussion, 2 weeks from yesterday, April 17th, Garvey Day, we'll be back at Terra Cafe, which is 101 East 25th Street, Baltimore, Maryland, at 2 p.m. We will have our 10th anniversary celebration of the Straight Black Pride movement. So that's free for straight black and proud people. So if you're straight, you're black and you're proud, you're on the East Coast, it's free for you. You can come through. If not, well, I'm not saying you can't come. I'm just saying that you probably just had to go to another section and eat your food over there. But the food is excellent, though. You know what I'm saying? So I do recommend the venue. Let's see. Brother Saw says the brother has always had the ability to meet, but the key fact is that the same thing is now happening for the 85%. Indeed. So that is, that's where he is. And that's where we'll be 2 weeks from now. Brother Darren Muhammad will be there. Of course, I'll be there. Brother Jeannie will be there. And we may have some other people. So I'll probably let you all know next Sunday when I think everything will be finalized, right? Because we may have some entertainment or something as well. Not 100% sure. That was in discussion. So, and I'll let you all know how you can get that live stream as well. I think I have actually found a way to do it for free. So looks like I may be able to do it for the free 99. All right, now that's enough announcements. I did just have to say that because it was important. Now, if you have been listening to and watching the center for the last how many months you got ripped off? Seemed like the last 6 months or so. We've been documenting things going on geopolitically, and showing, you know, how close we are to war. So basically all of this year. And you know, we've seen different things. We've talked about different operations. We talked about the Ukraine theater. We talked about you know, Ukraine versus Russia. We talked about Israel, Palestine, going back to you know, after October 7th. We've talked about the secret and hidden battle between Israel and Russia that's been going on before Israel existed. We talked about the Sahel, the formation of the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, on the geopolitical importance of that. We've talked about the Kenyan Revolution. We've talked about Haiti. We've covered a lot of things geopolitically, and a lot of people may not understand. All of these things are interrelated, and all of these things will eventually affect people in America, because eventually, as Malcolm X says, the chickens come home to roost, right? And we are, myself, Little Genie, Straight Black Pride, are really the only people I've seen in the Black community really break down who's behind it, what their objective is, and why they're doing it, right? So we're going to continue that tonight, because a lot of stuff is going on. So I want to put up a simple timeline. This is not 100% exact because I didn't write it down or anything, but this is just from my recollection. So within the last month or so, you had the NATO meeting here in Washington, D.C. After the NATO meeting, a couple of days after the NATO meeting, you had the attempted assassination on former president and the leader at the time, as far as the polls, President Trump. Right? After that, you had Netanyahu come to speak before Congress. And then after Netanyahu came to speak before Congress, you had a alleged attack on Israel from Hezbollah, in which case you had the response by Israel to kill Hezbollah and a Hamas leader, one of them in Iran, in Iran, right? So this is where we are literally in the last month. And you just had, I think 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, an attack by the Tuaregs, who are Arab African hybrids, on Russian soldiers in Mali. Greetings to Brother Safo, right? Now, somebody's gonna say, all right, what does any of that, how are those things connected? What does that, any of that have to do with Black people? Why should I care? Okay. For months. Okay, excuse me, wrong. For years, the United States has been, let me correct myself. For years, Western Israel, right, has been trying to push what we know of as the United States military into a conflict with Russia, right, through various means. Now, people will say that the media says that one day Vladimir Putin woke up and decided to invade Ukraine. That's ridiculous. As we have previously documented, what actually happened is that the United States government, the CIA, and probably Israeli Mossad, but definitely with the backing of small hats or Zionists, right, overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014 with Victoria Nuland and all that, and then placed Zelensky, right, who was a Jewish actor, on top of the Ukraine, Eventually, Russia announced that there were biological weapons in the Ukraine targeting Russia, right? So that's the main reason for the war between Ukraine and Russia. The reason it affects you as a black person is if you pay taxes, or if you're one of these people that says, hey, no money should go out to anybody else before black people get out of reparations. Well, billions of dollars has been going to Ukraine for this project. So that's your reparations monies in Ukraine getting blown up by Russia. That's where it's at, right? And who's behind that? Again, those who say they are Jews and are not, but indeed are what the synagogue of Satan. So we'll just say that. We'll just use synagogue of Satan for the time being, right? Now, while that is taking place on one front, you've had the whole October 7th situation, which Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, who are probably the most efficient intelligence service in the world, better than the CIA, I would say. Also formerly known as the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. For those that don't understand, look at those letters: Israeli I, Secret S, Intelligence I, Service S. Take all the time you need to process the information that I had just delivered. Right? So now, after October 7th happened, you had the massacre in Gaza. That's the ongoing massacre in Gaza, right? Now, Mr. Netanyahu, who came to the U.S. to basically tell the U.S. to prepare to fight Iran, right after the Trump thing. If you tell somebody to prepare to fight, now you need an excuse to fight. So what's the excuse? Well, here we are. Let's get into our first article. No, here we go. Yeah, here we go. This is from NPR. It's going to be relatively short. Israel and Hezbollah are on the brink of war. This isn't the first time, right? It says Israel and Hezbollah fought brief wars in 1996 and 2006. Both times Israel thought it would teach Hezbollah a quick and painful lesson. Yet that didn't happen. Now there's the possibility of a third round, and Hezbollah has more firepower than ever. Says the United States is urging its citizens in Lebanon to leave the country immediately amid growing concerns of a regional conflict in the Middle East. This follows two attacks blamed on Israel this week, which killed leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas and prompted threats of retaliation. Israel and the Lebanese group Hezbollah have fought two previous wars, one in 1996, the other in 2006. NPR's Greg Meyer covered both of these conflicts. He was reporting from Israel and joins the host Snap. Says, can you describe how those two earlier wars started and played out? Greg says, yeah, there were a number of similarities that still hold true today. In both conflicts, Israel and Hezbollah were exchanging regular but lower level fire, just like now, before it escalated into a full-scale war. Both times, Israel thought it would teach Hezbollah a quick and painful lesson. That fighting in 1996 was quite intense, but Hezbollah held its ground and proved a much tougher opponent than Israel anticipated. I covered that first war from the Lebanese side. The fighting, it lasted more than 2 weeks, and then it ended shortly after Israel fired on Hezbollah position, but missed the mark and hit Lebanese civilians taking shelter at a UN compound. Remember that, right? Remember that. More than 100 civilians were killed. This caused international outrage. The fighting stopped and nothing was resolved. Now remember, if you've been following them, many times they try to tell us that Israel is the most moral army in the world. which again, if war, people gonna die. It's just plain and simple. Right? It's war, people gonna die. So the idea that your army is more moral than some other army is shenanigans at best. You know. Now it says, so he asked a question. He said, so nothing was resolved. He said no. The dynamics were very similar, though this time the fighting was on a much larger scale. In 2006, both sides fired rockets nonstop around the clock. Imagine this rainbow of rockets flying in both directions across the border. And bizarrely, one relatively safe place was to be right on the border, beneath the rainbow of rockets flying overhead. So this time I was on the Israeli side of the border town of Metula for much of the 5-week war. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Neither side made any tangible gains, and this war ended in a draw. And then he says, in this context, he's like, so we have this context. We have the increased amount of tensions and concern right now in 2024. What do you think these two previous wars suggest about a third war? What a third war might look like? He says, well, a third one could be even more destructive. Hezbollah's arsenal of rockets supplied by Iran, remember that part, is exponentially larger than before. Back in 2006, it was estimated to be around 15,000. Now the estimate is 150,000. These are larger, more precise weapons that can reach far deeper into Israel, including Tel Aviv. I spoke about this with Paul Salem of the Middle East Institute, who's based in Beirut. Now, the other guy says Hezbollah is very accomplished, very tough, very well equipped, very well trained, and learns very quickly from war to war. And the 2006 war was proof that they learned from the 1996 war. And one must imagine that in 2024, they'll even be more capable and advanced. And the other gentleman said, could the prospect of a clearly very damaging war keep both sides from escalating beyond what we've seen? He says, well, that's been the thinking since they started exchanging fire 10 months ago, just after Hamas invaded southern Israel. However, Israel killed this top Hezbollah leader with an airstrike in Beirut, Lebanon, right? On Tuesday. Let's stop right here. Hezbollah is a paramilitary wing of Lebanon, which is directly north of Israel. I wish I had a map to bring up. My apologies, right? Y'all can look up the map for yourself. Now, for Israel to make a military strike in a sovereign country that is allegedly not at war with is a violation of international law. But is anybody in the media saying that Israel violated international law by killing somebody in Lebanon? Remember, they killed somebody in Syria too, inside the Syria consulate area. Did you hear the United States condemn that? Did you hear the United States call it terrorism? Did you hear the United States say this is a violation of international law? Absolutely not. Right? So when we look at so-called international law, it's a matter of rules for thee, but not for me. BB488 to Sister Najee. Right? Now, he says that raised the prospect that the fighting could escalate. Now, Paul Salem says Hezbollah and his patron Iran have made it clear they don't want a major war, but they now say that if Israel wants a full-scale fight, they're ready for it. We should note Lebanon faces chronic political and economic problems, and a war could be devastating. And Israel is already stretched thin by the war in Gaza. A second front will be a tremendous burden on that country. Salem and other analysts say that if Israel can work out a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza, that it will almost certainly result in a ceasefire with Hezbollah. False. They do not want a ceasefire in Gaza. And they want a two-front war. Understand, Israel doesn't want a two-front war because they can win the war. Israel wants the two-front war so that they can bring the United States into the war, right? Remember that. This is what you have to understand. Israel cannot defeat Iran one-on-one. Why? Because to defeat Iran one-on-one, Israel will have to fight Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Houthis, and any other Muslim that rallies to the flag of Islam under the Shia government of Iran. You see what I'm saying? So we're talking about one small country, Israel, versus a significant percentage of Islam around the world. Again, the only way that Israel can win that war is to use nuclear weapons. You say, oh, well, if they do that, then what? Well, if Israel uses nuclear weapons against Iran, then Russia is going to obliterate Israel. Right? Now, the next thing is you're like, well, Russia obliterates Israel. Won't the U.S.? Exactly. Are we starting to get a picture of how quickly this could get out of hand? So Israel knows that they cannot win a conventional war. And here's something else that just took place. I just found out about it. While this is going on, the Iraqi government, where Iraq has a large number of Shia Muslims in it, are trying to kick the U.S. government out of Iraq right now. In a war with Iran, Iraq would be a major staging area for the United States to attack Iran, right? But if they lose that staging area, it makes it that much more difficult. Now, Iran cannot defeat Israel if the United States is fully backing Israel, and basically it's really the United States Army versus Iran. Iran cannot win that war, conventional war, right? But what is going to happen if that's the case? If that's the case, China and Russia are going to back Iran. And there's a possibility of India and or Pakistan, one or the other, picking a side, right? Because of the BRICS situation. So it's very easy if you do war game scenarios to see how this could easily spin out of control, which is why we're discussing it tonight. Because if the United States has to fight with Iran, and at the very end, I'm going to show you why, unfortunately, it's even closer than what we're talking about right now. That bill that we were talking about that was drafted to expand the draft from age 18 to 26 to include men and women will at that point be enacted, right? So that's why this is so dangerous. That's why we're having this discussion. Now, what is the event that has caused an upscale in the conflagration between Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon, and Israel? So let's go to our next article. We're going to talk about, well, first of all, we're going to go to the CFR, Council of Foreign Relations, to understand who Hezbollah is, because I know a lot of people don't really know who Hezbollah is, right? It says, what is Hezbollah? Military experience gained fighting in Syria's civil war and generous support from Iran have made the Shia militia group a formidable foe for Israel. But at the same time, its political clout amongst Lebanon's populace may be waning. Is one thing you got to always remember whenever you're reading Western sources of information. They're always trying to downplay an enemy and always trying to find a weakness in the enemy, right? So when you read things from a Western perspective, always remember that. They always underestimate. One thing I realized, they always underestimate the enemy, right? It happens all the time. That's why the U.S. doesn't win any wars anymore. They always think it's just going to be easy. You're going to walk in there and smack the people up and leave. And it doesn't work that way. Now, summary says Hezbollah wields significant power in Lebanon, where it operates as both a Shiite Muslim political party and an armed group. It opposes Israel and Western powers operating in the Middle East, and it functions as a proxy of Iran. The group has faced unprecedented scrutiny from the Lebanese public amid the country's political and economic crises. Now, I'm not sure, but if I had to guess about where the economic crises are happening for in this country, more than likely the West has something to do with it, right? Because that's how it works. They attack you on multiple fronts. Now, it says Hezbollah is a Shiite Muslim political party and militant group based in Lebanon, where its extensive security apparatus, political organization, and social services network have fostered its reputation as a state within a state. Founded in the chaos of the 15-year Lebanese civil war, the Iranian-backed group is driven by its opposition to Israel, its resistance to Western imperialism in the Middle East. Due to its history of carrying out so-called terrorist attacks internationally, Hezbollah has been designated a terrorist organization by the United States of America. Not surprising. And many other countries, though some just apply this label to its armed wing. Hezbollah's deep-rooted alliances with Iran and Syria have transformed it into an increasingly effective military force, creating a formidable opponent for its long-term enemy, Israel. Escalating border clashes between the two adversaries now threaten to open a new battlefront in the ongoing Israeli-Hamas war, which would come at great cost to economically devastated Lebanon. It also would come at great cost to Israel, right? And then they have different points of time here. It says, how did Hezbollah originate? Hezbollah emerged during the Lebanon Civil War, which broke out in 1975, with long simmering discontent over the large armed Palestinian presence in the country reached a boiling point. Various Lebanese sectarian communities held differing positions on the nature of the Palestinian challenge. Under a 1943 political power is divided amongst Lebanon's predominant religious groups. A Sunni Muslim serves as the prime minister, a Maronite Christian as a president, and a Shiite Muslim as the speaker of parliament. Tensions among these groups evolved into civil war as several factors upset the delicate balance. The Sunni population had grown with the arrival of Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, while Shiites felt increasingly marginalized by the ruling Christian minority. Interesting. Amid the infighting, Israeli forces invaded southern Lebanon in 1978 and again in 1982 to expel Palestinian guerrilla fighters that used the region as their base to attack Israel. A group of Shiites influenced by the theocratic government in Iran, the region's major Shiite power, which came to power in 1979, took up arms against the Israeli occupation, seeing an opportunity to expand its influence in the Arab states. Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard provided funds and training to the budding militia, which adopted the name Hezbollah, meaning Party of God. It earned a reputation for extremist militancy due to its frequent clashes with rival Shia militias, including the Amal movement, and its attacks on foreign targets, including the 1983 suicide bombing of barracks housing U.S. and French troops in Beirut, in which more than 300 people died. Hezbollah became a vital asset to Iran, bridging Shiite, Arab, and Persian divides as Tehran establishes proxies throughout the Middle East. That part is important because Iran is a Persian nation, and Persians and Arabs are two different people that often don't get along, right? So that's what makes all of these different alliances and agreements and groups hard to understand, because you have moving alliances and different groups aligning with each other and then sometimes fighting each other, right? So that's Hezbollah. We're just in that right there. So here's what you have to know from that. At this moment, after the fight with Hamas, Israel still has a fight with Hamas. They're still massacring Palestinian civilians. And now so that's what's happening in the south, in the middle of Israel. And now to the north of Israel, there's a fight with Lebanon, which is the country directly north of Israel. All right. Do we have a clear understanding of that so I can move forward? Going once, going twice. Any questions? All right, cool. Now, what I want to talk about before I talk about the event that allegedly has started this conflict with Hezbollah, I want to talk about a concept that we don't often talk about. It's called a false flag operation. What is a false flag operation? A false flag operation is where an event takes place and one group of people is blamed for it, but in reality, a totally different government did it. So, for example, as a hypothetical, this is not actually, but as a hypothetical, right? Let's say a terrorist attack happened in Washington, D.C., and it was blamed on Iran. But 10 years later, we find out that Israel did it. That would be a false flag operation, right? So I'm going to go through some history and let's see. We'll pick up something called the Levant affair. How a false flag operation led to war and the Israeli bomb, right? Now, how many people have heard of the Levant affair? First of all, if you have, you're extremely, extremely educated. Because I knew about this event, but I could not remember what it was called. Now, the Levant affair, a failed Israeli covert operation directed against Egypt in 1954, triggered a chain of events that had profound consequences for power relationships in the Middle East. Why am I talking about a false flag operation in 1954? I'm talking about a false flag operation in 1954 to do what? To establish precedents that the Israeli government indeed has engaged in false flag operations previously, admittedly, and documented, right? Just keep this in mind as we proceed forward. Now, he says that the affair effects still reverberate today. Those effects included a public trial and conviction of 8 Egyptian Jews who carried out the covert operation, 2 of whom were subsequently executed, a retaliatory military incursion by Israel into Gaza that killed 39 Egyptians, a subsequent Egyptian-Soviet arms deal that angered American and British leaders, who then withdrew previously pledged support for the building of the Aswan Dam, the announced nationalization of the Suez Canal by Gamal Abdel Nasser in retaliation for the withdrawn support. Now, remember, all this came from one event, and the subsequent failed invasion of Egypt by Israel, France, and Britain in an attempt to topple Gamal Abdel Nasser. In the wake of that failed invasion, France expanded and accelerated its ongoing nuclear cooperation with Israel, which eventually enabled the Jewish state to build nuclear weapons, which were opposed by President John F. Kennedy, who told Ben Gurion at the time that they will not receive any nuclear weapons and they will not receive any help from the United States. And then subsequently to that, coincidentally, President John F. Kennedy, the Catholic president, was assassinated in the wake of his denial of nuclear weapons to Israel and his fight against the international bankers that he spoke about before he was assassinated. In which case, after he was assassinated, the man accused of his assassination was himself assassinated by a Jewish strip club owner. Coincidentally. But I digress. Let me move forward. Now, let's look at the Levant affair a little more closely. Codenamed Operation Susanna, conducted in Egypt in 1954 as part of a false flag operation. A group of Egyptian Jews were recruited by Israeli military intelligence to plant bombs inside Egyptian, American, and British-owned civilian targets, cinemas, libraries, and American educational institutions. The bombs were timed to detonate several hours after closing time. The attacks were to be blamed on the Muslim Brotherhood, Egyptian communists, unspecified malcontents, or local nationalists, with the aim of creating a climate of sufficient violence and instability to induce the British government to retain its occupying troops in Egypt's Suez Canal zone. Right. The operation caused no casualties amongst the population, but resulted in the deaths of 4 operatives. The overseer of the operation allegedly informed the Egyptians, after which 11 suspects were arrested. 2 died by suicide after being captured. 2 were executed by Egyptian authorities. 2 of them were acquitted at trial, and the remaining 5 received prison terms ranging from 7 years to life in prison. The operation ultimately became known as the Levant Affair, after Israeli Defense Minister Pinhas Lavan, who was forced to resign as a consequence of the incident. Before Lavan's resignation, the incident had been euphemistically referred to in Israel as the unfortunate affair, or the quote-unquote bad business, or Hasek Habish. Israel publicly denied any involvement in the incident until 2005. This happened in 1954. So they lied for 50 years, despite being caught red-handed. Do we understand? 50 years of lying about a false flag operation, and now we have the documentation. So if I tell you, hey, it's possible that the United States or Israel or some other country pulled a false flag operation, we have historical precedent to say, oh, well, I mean, I can't dismiss that out of hand because that has happened before, right? Again, as we say, documentation beats conversation, right? So now let's look at it. It says that the early 50s, United States initiated a more activist policy of support for Egyptian nationalism, right? Which goes against what Israel wanted. Again, this is the 50s. This aim is often in contrast to Britain's policy, maintaining its regional hegemony. Israel feared that the U.S. policy, which encouraged Britain to withdraw its military forces from the Suez Canal, would embolden military ambitions towards Israel of Gamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt. Israel at first sought to influence this policy through diplomatic means, but was frustrated. So they said, to heck with that. In the summer of 54, Colonel Benjamin Ghibli, the chief of Israel's military intelligence directorate, initiated Operation Susanna in order to reverse the decision. Right? So, committing a terrorist attack and blaming it on someone else for political gain is a false flag operation. Are we clear now on what a false flag operation is for those that may not have known? Any questions? If you're on the Instagram side, I can't see your question. I ain't gonna lie to you. So you got to come over to YouTube side to ask me a question. Going once, going twice. All right, we're finished with the Levon affair. Now, what happened recently for me to talk about all that stuff about a false flag operation? Here we are. It says, who are the Druze? A look at the community following a deadly attack. The Arab ethno-religious community was at the center of Saturday's attack on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. These are the Druze. It says a projectile, this was from August 1st, a projectile hit a football pitch. When they say football, you know what I mean? You know, they talk about soccer, what we call soccer, in the town of Majdal Shams on Saturday in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Stop right here. Did it say that the attack was in Israel? No, it said the attack was in a place occupied by Israel, the Golan Heights. The Golan Heights actually belongs to who? But it's a part of Syria. Remember that part, right? That's an important detail. Now, it says Israel blamed the attack on the Lebanese group Hezbollah. Who did it? Israel. They blamed who? They blamed Hezbollah, saying it would pay a heavy price. Hezbollah said, we ain't do it. On Tuesday, Israel struck Beirut, killing at least 3 people in an air raid. Israel's military said it had targeted Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr, accusing him of being responsible for the Golan Heights attack. On Wednesday, Hezbollah confirmed that Shukr had indeed been killed. Majdal Shams is a Druze town. Here's a quick look at the community. The Druze are an ethno-religious minority that largely identifies as Arab and is Arabic speaking. The Druze religion grew out of Ismaili Shia Islam in the 11th century, but has evolved to include aspects of other religions, including Hinduism and ancient philosophy. The faith believes in reincarnation while recognizing traditional figures in Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The minority has remained largely separate from surrounding communities, with no proselytizing and marriage outside of the faith being discouraged. Where do they live? The community is found in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and the Golan Heights, Syrian territory. Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory occupied by Israel. Ties between Druze and different communities remain strong. Let's stop right here. Let us go back. Let's go back. The Druze are Arab and Arabic-speaking people who grew out of the Shia religion, right? Now, what religion did I say that the people in Iran practice? They practice Shia Islam. Israel is going to tell you that they are going to war against Shia Islam because some people who practice Shia Islam were killed in Syria, a Shia country, but that the part of Syria that Israel happened to occupy. Just take all the time to process the information I'm giving you, and y'all tell me, does that make any sense? Do we really believe that Israel is protecting the rights of Shia Muslims in occupied territory? Shia Muslims who identify as Arab, while at the same time murdering Arabs in Gaza. So you gonna tell me you're defending this group of Arab Muslims who are Shia by fighting against Shias, but you are murdering Christians and Sunnis and Shia Muslims in another part of your country. And you're gonna blame it on Shia Muslims that they did the bombing. Does that make any sense at all? Or is it more likely that we have what? A false flag operation that has taken place where Israel has taken the time to murder Shia Arab Muslims in occupied territory and use it as an excuse to go to war. Right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play a couple of clips. The first clip is 1 minute long. This is I believe he's Israeli. It's from a longer, it's from an hour-long interview, but it's just a 1 minute clip. And all he's going to talk about is false flag operations. So we are going to, oops, my bad, I messed up. We're going to bring up that clip. I put pause on the music. Yeah, let me say, where is the music? And y'all just check out this clip. In fact, I'll probably run it twice.
We're convinced that Israel had a hand in uprooting them. After the 1948 war, there was mounting popular hostility towards the Jews in Iraq. 5 bombs exploded in Jewish sites. The series of bombs created a panic which led more and more Jews to register to leave the country. I met an elderly friend of my mother's, an Iraqi Jew called Yaakov Karkukli, who had been in the Zionist underground. One member of his group, Yosef Basri, a very, very intelligent Jewish lawyer, and his assistant, Shalom Saleh Shalom, were responsible for 3 out of the 5 bombs. Basri's controller was an Israeli intelligence officer named Max Binet, who was based in Tehran.
Now y'all tell me, did y'all want to play that again? Maybe it went too fast. Maybe you couldn't hear him. Turn up your speakers. I'm gonna play it again. Listen to what this man says.
We're convinced that Israel had a hand in uprooting them. After the 1948 war, there was mounting popular hostility towards the Jews in Iraq. 5 bombs exploded in Jewish sites. The series of bombs created a panic which led more and more Jews to register to leave the country. I met an elderly friend of my mother's, an Iraqi Jew called Yaakov Karkukli, who had been in the Zionist underground. One member of his group, Yosef Basri, a very, very intelligent Jewish lawyer, and his assistant, Shalom Saleh Shalom, were responsible for 3 out of the 5 bombs. Basri's controller was an Israeli intelligence officer named Max Binet, who was based in Tehran.
Let us review. This man says that after the war, and after 1948, after Israel came to be, Israeli intelligence hired people to bomb Jews to make it uncomfortable for them to live where they live so that they would come to Israel. And when I went in the comment section of that particular video, there were other people talking about similar incidents happening in other countries. So before even the 1954 situation, false flag operations and terrorist operations done by Israeli intelligence against Israeli citizens was something that was done to force people to come to Israel. So what I'm talking about would not be new. It would be par for the course, right? Now, I'm gonna play one more clip that explains this whole Golan Heights situation, who the Druze is, and we'll have a crystal clear understanding after this clip. Now that we got a crystal clear understanding on false flags and the fact that they have been done by the Israeli government, as we listen to this Jewish gentleman tell us, we're gonna get an understanding of this current situation and how that has inflamed the animosities between Hezbollah, Iran, and Israel.
In the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights killed at least 12 children over the weekend. Israel's military spokesman referred to those killed as Israeli citizens, but when he did so, he was immediately interrupted.
שבה אזרחי מדינת ישראל ממג'דל שמס, קהילה, עדה דרוזית. הם לא אזרחי מדינת ישראל. אנחנו מחבקים אותם.
And when some Israeli politicians, including far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich, tried to attend the funeral of the victims, this happened. So what is this all about, and how can it help us understand the Druze community that live in the highly contested Israeli-occupied Golan Heights? So this attack happened on the Druze village of Majd al-Shams, and the 12 children who were killed were not Israeli passport holders or Israeli citizens. In fact, they were Syrian Arabs, like much of the Druze community who live in that area.
لتوضيح نقطة غير واضحة عند كثيرين، سكان مجد الشمس والجولان المحتل ككل يعرفون نفسهم باعتبارهم سوريين 100%. منذ احتلالهم عام 67 حتى اليوم رفضوا كل محاولات إسرائيل لسلخهم عن وطنهم الأم سوريا.
And most residents of Majd al-Shams absolutely refuse Israeli citizenship. Following the attack, many people were quick to point blame on who was responsible for the deadly strike. Israel, the US, and some Syrians blamed the Lebanese group Hezbollah. But Hezbollah claimed the strike was from a misfired Israeli Iron Dome rocket. The funeral procession for the 12 killed children was attended by much of the Druze community in Majd al-Shams. The residents kicked out several Israeli politicians who tried to attend the funeral, including members of the Israeli parliament and in particular far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich, and as they kicked him out they shouted, "Get out of here, you criminal." Those living in the occupied Golan Heights are now a mix of Syrian Arabs and Israeli settlers. Syrians in the Golan taking on Israeli citizenship has become more common since the Syrian war erupted in 2011, but the vast majority reject it. Non-citizen Druze, who are a religious minority group, are regarded as having permanent residency status by the Israeli government, but can't participate in elections. Some members of the Druze community do in fact serve in the Israeli army. The Golan Heights is a strategic area that borders Lebanon, Syria, Israel, and Jordan. It's recognized as part of Syria but was occupied by Israel in 1967 and later annexed by Israel in 1981. UN Resolution 242 calls for Israel to withdraw from the Golan Heights and other territories it occupied in 1967, including Gaza and the West Bank. But back in 2019, Donald Trump said the US should fully recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Some Israeli officials who blamed Hezbollah for the attack now warn of a strong response, something they've done multiple times in the past 9 months. But Lebanon's parliament speaker said Lebanon absolutely does not want war. But now many people are asking the question, will Israel use this attack to further expand its war?
Now, I think that clarified that situation, right? So that's the situation that has us moving ever closer to war. Now, what has happened since then. This is the BBC. Iran says Hamas leader killed from close range. You're like, hey, what leader? Hamas, or Islamic Resistance Movement, which is the movement that is opposing the colonialist occupation of Palestine, known as Israel, or the group that is, or the terrorist group that is fighting Israel, depending on your point of view, right? Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh, pardon me for butchering the man's name, but y'all know how it is. It's been a while since I studied Arabic, so my pronunciation is awful. Was killed with a short-range projectile fired from outside his guest house in Tehran, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps says. The paramilitary organization said the projectile weighed about 7 kilograms and caused a strong blast, killing Haniyeh and his bodyguard last Wednesday. The Hamas leader had been visiting the Iranian capital for the inauguration of President Masoud Pezeshkian. Now let me stop right here. If I'm not mistaken, and if I have the wrong information, I apologize. If I'm not mistaken, this man is actually in charge of being able to negotiate a possible ceasefire with Israel. I'm gonna say that again. I heard, when I first heard about it, I didn't hear about his name. I just heard that the Hamas leader in charge of having a possible ceasefire was killed. And I'm like, wait, what? And then it dawned on me, I said, because they don't want a ceasefire. One way to delay the negotiations of ceasefire is simply kill the guy that's supposed to be doing the negotiating, right? That's about as efficient as it gets to try to stop negotiations. Can't negotiate without negotiating, right? Now, let's get back to the article. It says that the IRGC accused Israel of designing and implementing the operation, supported by the U.S., which of course Israel's always supported by the U.S., and every U.S. president says that Israel must be supported at all costs. And of course, the current president, even though he's not really in charge of anything, has said that he is a staunch Zionist. The vice president is married to a Jewish person who I'm sure has dual citizenship in Israel. So we know he's a staunch Zionist. So, and the Secretary of State, he happens to be Jewish. So we know he's a staunch Zionist. So there is no one that we can think of in the executive branch of the United States of America that would oppose Israel, and Israel's not going to oppose Israel. So we have to conclude that maybe, just maybe, the IRGC is onto something. The IRGC accounts is at odds with reports in Western media, which have suggested that the explosives were planted in the guest house by Israeli operatives. So here, somebody's lying. I don't know who, but somebody's lying, because we got two different stories here. Now, the failure surrounding Haniyeh's death, especially on a day marked by intense security, have caused much embarrassment for Iran and the IRGC. Dozens of IRGC officers had been arrested or dismissed in the days since Haniyeh's death, the New York Times reported on Saturday. The paper said the organization's intelligence agency had taken over the investigation. Staff members at Haniyeh's guest house have been interrogated and their phones and electronics have been seized. Meanwhile, the security details of Iranian politicians have been overhauled. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei led prayers for Haniyeh on Thursday, but was whisked away soon after the ceremony by his security detail. The IRGC statements on Saturday came after Britain's Daily Telegraph said Haniyeh was killed by bombs planted in his room by agents of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency. Now let's stop right here. Do we know who's really Oh, I got to diversify my vocabulary. Yeah, I guess I got to go back to working on my Arabic. That's not going to happen. I don't have time. Don't have the time nor inclination. The brother made me lose my train of thought. Now, this is what I want to say. Black people in America have experience with how dangerous it can be to be over in the so-called Middle East. Let us not forget our beloved brother and ancestor, Minister Malcolm X, was poisoned over in the East. So it can be a dangerous proposition for anyone, right? But it is quite embarrassing that Iran and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and their security forces were unable to keep this man breathing, regardless of how it happened. It's still a bad look to have a guest here on your territory, or even not a guest, to have anybody on your territory and have them killed, right? Again, remember, the president of Iran was recently assassinated, but they say died in a helicopter crash where they said it was a clear sky. They took off. They supposedly going up a mountain or something. That was they were the first helicopter, which I always thought you should be the one in the middle, but hey, who asked me? And so clouds came out of nowhere, and next thing you know, they didn't see the aircraft no more. They don't know what happened, right? No, to this day, no one has a clear idea what happened. But most people blame Israel. Because why not? Because Israel's been killing people left and right lately. So, if there's a likely person or likely group, I should say, to have killed the Iranian president, Israel's the most likely group. But let me get back to the article. Now, but Hamas officials told the BBC early this week that Haniyeh had stayed at the same guest house before. He had made up to 15 visits to Iran since becoming the head of the political bureau in 2017. The paper reports, if true, would represent an even bigger failure for the IRGC, who have long controlled internal security in the country. Experts say that it would highlight the degree to which Mossad can operate with impunity in Iran. Regardless of the manner of Haniyeh's death, both Iran and Hamas have vowed to retaliate. IRGC said on Saturday that Israel will receive a severe punishment at an appropriate time, in place, and manner. Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia and political group in Lebanon, has also vowed reprisals. One of their top commanders, Fuad Shukr, was killed in an Israeli strike last Tuesday after an Israeli operation killed IRGC Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahidi in Damascus earlier this year. We talked about that. Iran fired 170 drones and 30 cruise missiles and at least 110 ballistic missiles towards Israel. Now, that at that time was simply a show of force, but was not meant to cause damage, because they actually told the United States that quote unquote attack would take place. Whether that type of measured response would take place again is largely unknown, right? Now, that is that. I'm gonna stick with that. Now, somebody's gonna say, all right, DC, yeah, okay. Yeah, Hamas, Hezbollah, I get it. They're gonna fight, blah, blah. They'll fight, they'll have a war. A few people get killed and everything will calm down, right? I know somebody saying that. You are right about to turn off your YouTube, but let us stop. What has Brother Genie been telling us for the longest time? He said the goal is for Israel to use America's military to fight against Russia. Now, somebody's going to say, bruh, I got a map. Iran is not Russia. Those are two different countries. And I'm going to say you are correct. But as I remember, I guess sometime last year, I forgot how long ago it's been now, I pointed out to you how the scenarios could play out and who's connected with who. Let us review what I said, right? Or let us update. As we see here, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, right, who are in Yemen, are all connected to Iran, right? According to the United States and other people, they are proxies for Iran. Iran, one of their main allies is Russia. And one of Russia's main allies is China. And one of Russia's other main allies is North Korea. North Korea, China, and Russia are nuclear powers. There's been discussion about which way India might go in this situation. And India is a nuclear power. And Mr. Putin just had a meeting with India, probably to discuss these situations should something untoward occur. Now, let us do some basic math here. India has about 1 billion people. China has about 1 billion people. Russia has several 100 million people. And I'm not sure about Iran. So, a conflict with Israel against 2 billion people or so doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like if you think about how can I win a war? Irritating 2 billion people, but it's only 8.5 or so on the planet. So irritating 25% of the population of the planet Earth, it's not a good idea, right? So how do you balance that out? If you want a war that basically destroys all the current military powers, well, see, you get the United States involved and you get Europe involved. And then you get all these people to fight each other, to kill each other off, to deplete themselves economically and militarily. And then you're the last man standing. Right? It's very simple. Now, to us, it sounds completely insane because there's a chance that most of the world's incinerated in a nuclear holocaust, right? Like, that's a very real scenario here. But if you read Brother Jeannie's book, Psychology of Who, you'll get some understanding. Now, let us get back to our next article. Because you're going to say, well, why would the United States get into a war with Iran, even if Iran does something to Israel? What's our next story? What are they telling us happened? Now, they've done the investigation. They found, and we've talked about this, they found a young man who was connected to BlackRock. BlackRock is a company that is run by Larry Fink, who happens to be what? Jewish. In other words, the assassin is directly connected to a Jewish corporation. Right? But the media, which is often controlled by Jewish people, tells us what? Iran plot to kill Trump prompted Secret Service to boost protection before rally. Now, how do we know that this is a lie? Because I condemn this as a damnable lie. You're like, well, DC, how can you say this is a lie? I can say this is a lie because the Secret Service themselves said that they did not give Trump extra security before the assassination attempt. You can look that article up. I didn't bring it up, but you can look that article up. So if you did not increase the security, even though Trump had asked for extra security. You did not give him the security. Then how can you tell me that a plot made you boost the security that you didn't have? Because we know you didn't have extra security because the person had a clear shot at him from inside what should have been the secured perimeter, where allegedly the person who climbed up a building that should have been secured because personnel who were part of the security detail were inside the damn building. And we already have we've documented that in a previous show. So this is a lie. Why is this lie being told? This lie is being told in order for what? Or Mr. Netanyahu can get to the United States to co-sign and join in on his war against Iran, which is a war against who? Russia, which is a war against China, which is could be a war against India and North Korea, etc., etc. Based on what? What did we talk about at the beginning? A what? False flag operation. Done by who? Those who say they are Jews and are not, but indeed are the synagogue of Satan. Are we starting to get a picture of how dangerous the times are and how we could get involved in something that could break America, destroy Israel and Europe and Russia? But do the people in Israel have a contingency plan for not being in Israel when all this happens? Of course they do. And that's been talked about previously as well. Now, I'm not even going to waste time getting into that plot because I've already just said that it's false. But let's see what Iran says. Iran blasts Trump assassination plot claims. U.S. media reports claim that an Iranian plot to target Republican presidential candidate is unrelated to the attack in Pennsylvania. Iran angrily dismissed the United States media reports that it had been plotting the assassination of former U.S. President Donald Trump. A foreign ministry spokesman on Wednesday stated that Iran rejects the malicious allegations that it had plotted an attack on the Republican presidential hopeful. However, Nasser Kanani asserted that Iran aims to prosecute Trump for ordering the assassination of a senior military official in 2020. Now, that's interesting. I don't know how they're going to plan to go about that, but good luck with that part. You know what I'm saying? Now, hold up. Our brother has a super chat. Let's get into this real quick. Brother says Warren Buffett is distancing himself from this. Follow the money. BlackRock is owned mostly by Merrill Lynch, which owns Bank of America, and he sold his shares in Bank of America. I did and see that he's indeed saw that he sold his shares in Bank of America, but I did not make the BlackRock connection. So thank you for that, my brother. And he also says, so now we know who funded the assassination attempt. Right. Now, and may fund the next assassination attempt. Because many people in the media agree that there will probably be another assassination attempt on Mr. Trump. Now, think about that. Think about the major media saying that telling us in advance that there's probably going to be another attempt on the man's life. Now, Kanani said that Iran strongly rejects any involvement in the recent armed attack against Trump or claims that Iran's intention for such an action, considering such allegations to have malicious political motives and objectives. Iran is, however, still determined to prosecute Trump forced role in ordering the killing of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander Qasem Soleimani in 2020. U.S. authorities have long been on alert over potential Iranian retaliation in the killing of Soleimani. Tehran has promised harsh revenge, right? The initial report claiming that security for Trump had been ramped up in recent weeks after intelligence agencies received information on a potential Iranian plot to kill him did not name sources, right? However, National Security spokesman Adrian Watson then issued a statement confirming the intelligence regarding an Iranian plot, an Iranian threat to Trump in the national homeland security matter of the highest priority. She also confirmed that the investigation into the attack in Pennsylvania has no identified ties between the shooter and any accomplished or co-conspirator, foreign or domestic. That also is a lie, right? That I've been watching information that's just a lie. That's all I can say. It's a lie. They're lying. And one of the most important things to know is that not only is the Mossad or the Israeli security intelligence service inside of Iran, apparently, but they are also inside of the United States. Now, let's move to the next thing. Here's Mr. Trump, who has made one of the greatest and personal mistakes that I've ever seen. I just told you that Israel has committed false flag operations multiple times in their history. That the latest attack, or quote unquote, on Israel is probably a false flag operation because the attack wasn't on Israel and it wasn't on any Jewish people. And then we've had an attack on the president, and that there was no way that Iran had anything to do with the attack, but the media went on to talk about Iran claiming some threat. So with everything that I've shown and said, what happens? What does Mr. Trump say? If Iran assassinates me, U.S. must wipe it off the face of the earth. Well, there you go. This is so idiotic that I'm dumbfounded by the idiocy. Mr. Trump has given the go ahead that if worse comes to worse, if the United States does not agree to war with Israel, they'll simply kill him as the excuse to go to war. With Iran, they'll simply kill him as the excuse to go to war with Iran, and they'll blame it on Iran using what have we learned today, brothers and sisters? Making a false flag operation where they get to assassinate the president of the United States, who has already blamed the wrong country. It does start with an I, but it's not Israel. It is not Iran, it is Israel. So you got the wrong country with an I. So if he dies, Israel automatically gets the war that they're already looking for. So it's virtually impossible to avoid World War III. And thus, Iran simply does not fight back. This is where we are. We'll read the article just to read the article, but what is there to say? And this is in the Times of Israel, which lets you know how they feel about it. They're clapping and cheering. Yeah. Let's read part of the article. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump on Thursday invoked the annihilation of U.S. adversary Iran in a social media post reminiscent of his recent most incendiary outburst while in the White House. If they do assassinate President Trump, which is always a possibility, I hope that America obliterates Iran and wipes it off the face of the earth. If that does not happen, American leaders will be considered gutless cowards. Let's stop right here. Let's just stop right here. The fact that people can elevate to the highest levels of this society and yet be completely blind, deaf, and dumb to the realities of what's taking place really sometimes boggles my mind. All right. I'm truly dumbfounded at the complete and total ridiculous ignorance of this statement and how he managed to put a bullseye on his own forehead to co-sign his death and achieve the political objectives of his enemies. I'm just dumbfounded, right? I mean, I barely even know what to say. So let me say this real quick. I haven't said this yet, and normally say it on the hour, but you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1, on Twitter at dc_radical_one, on OTW2 at dcradical1, and you can donate via Cashapp $DCRadical1, and of course you can email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. All right, so let's look at this situation. We're going to look at it politically. We're going to look at it domestically and internationally. Here's the worst case scenario. It's bad all the way around. The worst case scenario is Mr. Trump gets assassinated before he becomes president. This causes Republicans to get demoralized, and they put Kamala Harris in office. Black people are seen celebrating Kamala Harris's victory, which white people in America will see as a disrespect of Trump. White people will then attack black people, blaming us for Kamala Harris's victory. And in some way, the media will probably have them blaming us for Trump's death. But we had, and then whatever, right? Which we'll see an uptick in the wanton murder of black people like we haven't seen domestically. At the same time, you'll then see the ramp up of war, and you'll see Kamala Harris using Donald Trump's death as a reason why we should side with Israel against Iran, because they're a shared enemy. And she'll probably even have her husband up there speaking and having some type of meeting based around anti-Semitism and not allowing people to speak and censorship and all that stuff. All of this will probably happen in the midst of an economic crash as well. That's the worst case scenario. What's so bad about this scenario is it can happen, and it's more likely to happen in the next 6 weeks than it is to happen in the next 6 years. So literally everything can go to you know what in a handbasket. This is where we are. So let me get through do I have another? Oh, and then I want to show how this can spread worldwide, and then we'll close out, right? So because Trump said that, there's nothing else that we have to even, there's nothing else we even, and then, oh wait a minute, hold on, I will say this. And to make it worse, after Trump said that, Netanyahu bringing up alleged Iranian plots against Trump in his address to the U.S. Congress on Wednesday, as we recently learned they even brazenly threatened to assassinate President Trump. That's Netanyahu telling blatant lies before Congress. So, anyway, now I'm going to go to something on the African continent that is tangentially related to everything that we discussed. It says dozens of Russian mercenaries killed in rebel ambush in Mali in their worst known loss in Africa. Now, someone's going to ask, what in the world does that have to do with it? Well, remember earlier I talked about the fact that Russia was fighting with Ukraine, right? And that was really a proxy war for Western Israel. And I showed an earlier video where a Israeli said that Russia would pay for some slight that he felt that Russia had, right? And of course, I stated previously that the Russian president is indeed a Jewish actor, cross-dressing actor at that. Now, let's read this because it affects, well, how would this affect black people? I just told you how it will affect black people domestically if these events occur. And meanwhile, in a war that's in Ukraine and Russia that shouldn't be affecting anything in Africa. It says the video is triumphant as it is groups of rebel fighters, rifles slung over their shoulders, step among the more than a dozen bodies strewn across the sand and rocks. Off camera, the pop of gunshots can be heard. The scene is from another battle in the vast deserts of northern Mali, except that this time the victims were Russians. At the end of the video, the camera pans to a bearded white man on the ground, apparently begging for mercy. A different video shows several white men still alive, kneeling amid the wreckage of a vehicle as guerrilla fighters encircle them. A pickup truck with militants approaches the men as others kick them in the head. The Russian mercenaries appear to have been attacked as they were accompanying Malian government troops on patrol last week near the Algerian border, a vast forbidden region where jihadi and Tuareg groups have long been active. Now, mind you, one of the reasons why the Sahel region was formed was to fight against terrorists. Oh, what did I say, brother? I said, no, yeah, the Ukrainian president is a Jewish cross-dressing, the Ukrainian president. So my corrections if I misspoke. One of the reasons that the three countries of the Sahel came together was to fight against terrorism, right? Now, the United States says that they're against terrorism. So if Russia is helping the Sahel region, including Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso fight against terrorism, you would think that the United States would be on board. But in this situation, we see that the terrorists, because look, notice here, suddenly what would be terrorists, what would be Islamic terrorists here in CNN are suddenly guerrilla fighters. Y'all see that switch up, right? Now, it says where jihadi and Tuareg groups have long been active. What were jihadi groups during 9/11? They were terrorists. Now they're just jihadi groups. The attack was claimed by a Tuareg rebel group, but again, rebel group. Now, look, notice no terrorists, and then it says along with Al Qaeda affiliates in the Sahel, but it still doesn't say terrorists, known as Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, right? Known for their ad hoc cooperation, they appear to have collaborated to trap the Russian convoy. JNIM claims Sunday that a complex ambush had wiped out the convoy, killing 50 Russians and a number of Malian soldiers, and published videos showing several vehicles ablaze as well as dozens of bodies in the area. The Tuareg militia group spokesman said some Malian and Russian fighters had also been captured during the battle. According to unofficial Russian Telegram channels, as many as 80 Russians were killed. That would make it by far the worst loss for Russian paramilitary groups in several years of operating in Africa, as the Kremlin has sought to use its proxy forces to challenge Western influence and fight against terrorism, don't forget that part, across the Sahel and Central Africa. an extraordinary twist Monday, a Ukrainian official claimed Kyiv had provided the militants with intelligence. Andrei Yusov, a representative of Ukraine's security service. Now understand, if the Ukraine had intelligence that they gave to the militants, the Ukrainians were aiding terrorists. And more than likely, because we have talked about earlier, who is the most efficient security service in the world? The Israeli Secret Intelligence Service, or ISIS, probably gave the Ukraine intelligence, because the Ukraine is also run by someone who happens to be Jewish, and then the Jewish person gave the information from ISIS to ISIS. Take all the time you need to process the information that I have provided. So while Ukraine is in a war with Russia, they're giving intelligence that I'm willing to bet $10 came from, with aid from Israel, to attack an African nation that has an alliance with Russia. So if we sit around and try to figure out, hey, how does this affect Black people? This shows how this can affect Black people. And the brother said the same Israel that trains American police. Yeah, that is Israel. Thank you, brother. Okay, this was the last one, but I'll bypass that. So, here's what I want us to get from tonight before I close out. 1, Israeli false flag operations have been going on as long as Israel has been going on, and they've been willing to target their own people, which means them killing other people for their political objectives that's par for the course. 2, Mr. Trump has co-signed his own death warrant via the Mossad. 3, there's no political will in Congress to not have a war in Iran backing Israel. 4, such a war is likely to bring in Russia and possibly China and North Korea and some African countries into this war. 5, while the United States is sending their troops over to this war, it's likely that NATO would join the war against Russia, and then the draft will be inaugurated in all NATO countries. 6, while all these able-bodied people are off in war in another country, the able-bodied people that the Hebrew Immigrant Service, the highest organization, those people that they help bring into the country will then be activated to cause total chaos in the United States, because the United States will be all fighting a war in Russia / Europe / Iran / Israel. We see the scenario here. What I've described is basically the complete and utter destruction of America, all based on a false flag operation with the help of people who have dual citizenship between Israel and America, who currently occupy the executive branch. Right? This is where we are. It's important for me to let you know where we are, so maybe you can defend yourself in this situation. But it does not look good. I know several people who have left the country. I know other people who are leaving the country. And I have no argument with that. But this is also a situation that could have global consequences. right? So Brother Crow says, or if Trump gets elected in the first day in office, he gets deleted. You have J.D. Vance as president, and he's even more pro-war and more pro-Israel. Right. And brother, you got ripped off says, remember, I've been saying for months now that the U.S. has already deployed Army Reserve in Jordan, and they were 2 black soldiers, male and female, that died. I thought it was 3, actually, brother. I thought it was 3 that were killed earlier this year. And yeah, and actually, I know somebody that's deployed, and they contacted me. I got actually contacted them. I totally forgot. They left me a message in that, and I forgot. So that just reminded me. They probably think I just blew them off, but nah, I just completely forgot with everything going on. So, again, August 17th, 2 p.m., Straight Black Pride Movement, 10th anniversary at Terra Cafe, 101 East 25th Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21218. It is free. Also, I'll give details on the live stream at the beginning of the week on how that will operate, and we'll send out emails, and I'll put that information out on Instagram and YouTube as well. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at dc.radical1, on Twitter at dcradical_ONE, on OTW2 at dcradical1. If you think that this information was of value, you can donate $sign dcradical1, and you can email me at dc.radical_1 at protonmail.com. So right now I'm planning to come back on Tuesday, talk about a totally different topic. And don't forget, every Thursday, even in the midst of war, we got to have black love. So every Thursday, 9 p.m. here on YouTube, we are doing Straight Black Love Talk, SBL Talk. I do not currently have the topic, but we will be on this Thursday at 9 p.m. and also this Tuesday at 8 p.m. here on the center. So with that, brothers and sisters, I thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Again, we are on the path to 1,000, and we're getting closer every day. So if you're listening on Instagram, you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you happen to just come on YouTube and you're not subscribed. Again, I am your brother, DC Radical 1. And with that, I say a BB for ODA and Straight Black Pride. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also follow us on our other social media platforms. On Instagram, we're at dc.radical1. On Twitter, we're at dc_radical_ONE. And the Cashapp is $sign DCRadical1. Again, thank you for subscribing. A BB for ODA and Straight Black Pride.